In the West, death follows a fixed script. Someone dies, the body goes into a coffin, the coffin goes into the ground, people cry dressed in black, and then go home. It's simple, organized, distant. Most people in the modern Western world have never seen a dead body up close. Death has been outsourced to funeral homes, hospitals, and cemeteries. There's an entire sector of the economy dedicated to making sure you never have to deal with it directly. This is very recent in human history and very specific to a small part of the world. In Islam, when someone dies, the body must be buried within 24 hours. No exceptions, no embalming, no makeup, no coffin. The body is washed 3 times by people from the same family or community, wrapped in a simple white cloth called a coffin, and placed directly in the earth, lying on its side facing Mecca. The logic is straightforward. The body came from the earth and returns to the earth as quickly as possible. Mourning exists, but it's restrained. Excessive crying is discouraged because it shows a lack of acceptance of God's will. In Judaism, mourning has a set time frame and structure. Right after the burial, Shiva begins 7 days, during which the grieving family stays at home, does not work, does not cook, and doesn't worry about anything from the outside world. The community comes, brings food, and sits with them. Mirrors are covered so the mourner doesn't think about their own appearance. Leather cannot be worn because it's considered a luxury. The goal is simple: force people to stop completely and process what happened, without distractions or obligations. 7 full days just to feel. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead is not a funeral. It's a celebration. On November 1st and 2nd, families build altars at home and in cemeteries, with photos of the deceased, the food they liked, marigold flowers, candles, and personal objects. The belief is that at this time of year, the dead can come back for a short period to visit. So the family goes to the cemetery, decorates the grave, and spends the night there eating, drinking, playing music, and telling stories about the person who died. Death is not the end of the relationship, it's just a change of address. In Japan, cremation is not an option, it's mandatory by law in almost the entire country. But what happens after the cremation is what sets it apart. When the process is finished, the whole family gathers around the deceased's bones. Using special chopsticks, each person picks up a bone fragment and passes it to the next person. This is the only moment in Japanese culture where it's acceptable to pass something from chopstick to chopstick. Since in everyday life, this is considered bad luck because it recalls exactly this ritual. The bones are placed in the urn from bottom to top, starting with the feet, so that the deceased doesn't end up upside down. The last bone to be placed is the throat bone, the hyoid, which has a shape similar to a person sitting in a Buddha position. In Hindu India, cremation is also central, but it happens in a completely different way. The body is taken to the bank of the Ganges River in Varanasi, the holiest city in Hinduism, wrapped in cloth and placed on an open-air wooden pyre. It's the eldest son who lights the fire, a sacred duty that represents the last thing a son does for his father. The belief is that the fire releases the soul from the physical body, so it can continue the cycle of reincarnation. Dying in Varanasi and being cremated on the banks of the Ganges is considered the most powerful possible end to the cycle. The soul is freed permanently from the cycle of death and rebirth. Families travel hundreds of kilometers to ensure this final gift for the relative who died. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is a ritual called jhator, the sky burial. The body is taken to the top of a mountain and laid on a flat stone. A professional called a rogyopa breaks the bones, mixes them with barley flour and fat, and offers them to the vultures waiting nearby. Within a few hours, nothing remains. For Tibetan Buddhism, the body is just an empty shell after death. The consciousness has already gone. Leaving the body for the animals is an act of final generosity, the last donation a human being can make. The sky of Tibet doesn't have enough land to bury, and not enough wood to cremate. Jhator is not only spiritual, it's also the practical solution that makes sense in that environment. For the Aztecs, death was not the end, it was the beginning of a specific journey depending on how you died. Warriors who died in battle and women who died in childbirth accompanied the sun from dawn until noon. Those who drowned or died from water-related illnesses went to Tualokan, the paradise of the rain god. Most people traveled through Mictlan, a 4-year path across 9 levels of the underworld, facing specific obstacles at each level until reaching final rest. To help on this journey, the deceased was buried with food, tools, and a dog that served as a guide along the way. Human sacrifice within this cosmology was not cruelty. It was the currency that kept the sun moving. Without human blood, the cosmos would stop. The death of some guaranteed the existence of all. In ancient Egypt, death was a complex logistical problem. The mummification process took 70 days. First, the organs were removed, the stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver, and placed in separate vessels called canopic jars. The brain was removed through the nose with a metal hook and discarded. The Egyptians believed it had no important function. The heart stayed in the body because it was considered the seat of the soul and would be employed in the judgment of the dead against an ostrich feather. If the heart was heavier than the feather, full of sins, it was devoured by a monster called Amit, and the person ceased to exist forever. If it was lighter, the person moved on to eternal life. 70 days of preparation for a scale that decided everything. And then there's the Toraja people in Indonesia, who probably have the most different relationship with death on this entire list. When someone dies, the body isn't buried immediately. It stays at home for weeks, sometimes for months, in some cases for years. During this time, the deceased is not treated as dead. They're treated as someone who is ill. The family continues talking to them, bringing food, and including them in everyday conversations. The burial only happens when the family has managed to gather enough money for the ceremony, which can cost the equivalent of years of wages, and involves the sacrifice of water buffaloes, a feast, music, and hundreds of guests. The more water buffaloes sacrificed, the faster the deceased reaches Puya, the world of the ancestors. After the burial, every few years the bodies are exhumed, cleaned, dressed in new clothes, and photographed with the family, before being returned to the tomb. For the Toraja, death does not separate, it's just another phase of life together.